Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Hartz. I'm the online editor with Labels and Labeling magazine. And today we have a very exciting chat with our design columnist, Vicky Stroll. So Vicky, if you would like to introduce yourself, tell us a bit about who you are, what you do, we can hop on into our exciting topic today.
Sure, thanks for having me. I've been writing for Labels and Labeling, I think, a couple of years now. And I'm a graphic designer by trade, but I do a lot of packaging design. A lot of strategy and really a lot of design strategy to help people know what kinds of designs will connect better with people, with the shoppers and their consumers.
So today we're talking about connecting with a bit more of a unique audience, and that would be shoppers who are visually impaired, whether that be incorporating braille elements, tactile elements, or anything else in that kind of vein. I wanted to get a designer's input on what that looks like.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks.
So my first question would be, what are some of the considerations you should take into consideration, I guess, for designing for visually impaired?
So first off, let me just say that I actually haven't worked on a piece, but now that I'm thinking about it and we're talking about it, I'd really like to design for this community. It seems like when we are designing, and let's just separate this out from the non-sighted community, from the visually impaired community. But when we're designing, when I'm designing, and when designers are designing any kind of printed piece, whether it's packaging or a marketing communications piece, the most engaging types of pieces engage as many senses as possible. So now let's bring that concept, which is what I'm doing all the time anyhow, into helping this community, this visually impaired, non-sighted community. It feels like if there are things that we can do to enhance the design to help communicate better to that community, that would be great. That would be much more inclusive for that community. And so when you think about all the different senses, sight, well, there can't use sight. And then of course you have sound, which we can talk about because I have some ideas on that. But then you get into the sense of touch, right? So what is it that we can add to a package to increase that awareness of the sense of touch? Now, typically, if I'm not thinking about this community, I'm adding various touch elements to make it more engaging and to make it more memorable. But when I'm thinking about it in terms of this community, then I'm adding those elements with a communications lens on as I'm thinking about it. So think about it this way. You have 5 flavors of bruschetta, okay? Or you have 5 flavors of dried fruit. That one's easier to think about. And you have apricots, and you have strawberries, and you have cherries and figs and plums. Well, if you could do a different shape of tactile finishing on each of those, that could help. Could be one thing. It could be that you add a spot gloss or a tactile element to the name, so you can actually feel those letters. When I think about it, because I haven't done this before, I'm not versed in Braille. I don't actually know the statistics, how many people that are part of this community are versed in Braille or not versed in Braille. And I guess my question is, when you're talking about inclusivity, there are likely people that learned Braille maybe because they were born and they couldn't see, so that was a way for them to read and to communicate and to know what something is. But for someone maybe that develops a condition later in life, they're in an accident, whatever it is, they may not have learned Braille. So to me, this tactile way to communicate would be really valuable. I mean, it would be really fun, I think, to be able to design things with various textures or various things that would help communicate in addition to engage the broader community.
Right. And I think the challenge for designers is, how do you navigate serving that community that is visually impaired while not interfering with the visuals for the rest of the community? It's serving a very broad audience and then a narrower subset within that.
Yeah, and I think if you think about it in terms of what can you do, and if you already are designing for engagement for the senses, so okay, for instance, just thought of this. what if you had scented inks? Let's do that same sort of exercise, right? You've got different flavors and you could employ scented inks. Somebody might feel it, they might smell it. I mean, then all of a sudden it's much more engaging to the broader audience, certainly doesn't interfere with that, but it's so much more communicative and inclusive for this visually impaired audience.
Right. That's a great thing to consider. Now, have you seen these kind of designs being more common, or do you think this is still something that's breaking through in terms of inclusivity?
I think inclusivity is certainly part of the vernacular now, right? I mean, we're talking all about in terms of sustainable workforces and diversity and inclusion, right? So there's a lot of companies that are talking about this in terms of their workforce and who they're hiring and who they're promoting and who's in leadership positions and so on. And so the topic of inclusivity is really part of our climate right now. It just is. I don't know that it's part of the printed marketing materials or packaging materials, but I do know that it's part of the online design that is occurring, and whether it's a moral imperative or whether it's regulated, it is very important to be inclusive of all communities. So I think that it will start to break through as we expand the definition of inclusivity.
Right. Because what it really comes down to is what's realistic, but also how are you going to grow your market base if you are reaching out to these different communities?
Yeah,
so there's a lot to be done.
Yeah, there's a lot to be done. And I do believe that when you start to connect to communities, really niche communities that we're talking about, it could only help you as you start to include them, because those communities are likely very cohesive. And once they know that a brand is creating a product and trying to connect with them, I imagine the shareability of that and the conversations around that within those communities just start to grow. And so if the goal is to grow that base within that, I think it could only help you.
Right. And I think that it can sometimes kind of have unexpected benefits of, like, for example, P&G on their Herbal Essences new shampoo line, they've added tactile stuff for their shampoo and conditioner. There are a lot of people in this world who wear contacts and glasses who might not wear them in the shower, who aren't visually impaired in the sense that we think of. But that's a huge market. I myself wear glasses and contacts and I don't wear them in the shower. So instead of holding my bottle here, now I can feel it. I mean, I'm not who
so true. I hadn't even thought of that, but it's so true, because I have a shampoo and conditioner and it's the same shape. And I wish they were like a bright colored blue or a bright colored red. So I know, but you're right. You hold it here so you can read which one it is.
Exactly.
Or you pop out the wrong one and you go, oh, and you gotta flip the other way. So
exactly. And we're kind of those, I would say, unintended stray consumers who are benefiting from this. But it just shows that there is a world of opportunity when it comes to inclusive design for people who might not be considered strongly visually impaired, but are highly inconvenienced in the shower.
Yeah, no, it's such a great point. I love that, because, as I'm talking about that, I'm thinking, how do I relate to this? But now I completely relate to this. Thank you for doing that for me.
You're welcome. That was my key change moment when I saw those shampoos. I was like, that is very handy. But I mean, if design and packaging could do that for more people, I think that would be absolutely wonderful, because we all want to just make our lives a little bit better, and packaging has the power to do that.
I think so. And I also, as you talk about that, it's one thing to design the package to get somebody to purchase it, which is kind of what we're talking about. But it's something else with what you just brought up. And that's really what, called the second moment of truth. So it's how do I respond to it when I'm using it? So if you think about it in terms of certain packages, right? And like if you get a certain olive oil and it's always dripping down the side and it's making a mess in your pantry or your shelf, you may not buy it again, even though you might love it, but it's making a mess. Well, in this case, when you start talking about it in this context of the shampoo and conditioner, you may buy it more because that's such a good experience. That's such an unconscious and subconscious, I would call it subconscious. That's such a subconscious response, that you have that perception, but it is still very real, that response. So to be able to create that experience in the post purchase, then sort of loops back to create more of that loyalty, which is what brands want anyhow.
Right. Definitely a very, very powerful market that we have available to us.
It's true.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today, Vicki. I am very excited we got to chat about this topic. And to our lovely L&L people who are visiting us on our YouTube channel, be sure to keep your eyes out for an upcoming article all about braille labeling and tactile labeling as well, if you would like to learn more. Otherwise, thank you so much, Vicki, and we look forward to hearing more from you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and make sure to click the subscribe button at the top of the screen. You can see more videos from this playlist by clicking the video on the right or click the video on the left to see all of our other videos.